What's up, comic lovers? Simon here. Welcome to HannaTalk, and today I'm here with a voice actor, animation artist, and comedian who's best known as the voice of Stimpy from Ren and Stimpy adult party cartoon, and has since then gone on to voice characters such as Marvin the Martian, Woody Woodpecker, Flintstones, characters from the DC and Marvel Universe, Ben 10, Transformers, and more. Please welcome Eric Bauza.
Hey, what's up? I'm honking my horn. I'm driving while I'm in Los Angeles, which is probably very illegal, but I'll do anything to get on this show.
That's no problem at all. And how are you, Eric?
I'm doing pretty well. Actually, I just left work at Nickelodeon, working on a top secret project for them, and I always consider myself very lucky to leave the house.
That's no problem at all. So, on to the first question. What got you interested in animation?
What got me into animation, do you say?
Yes, that's right.
Well, I was doing a college internship. I'm originally from Toronto, Canada, and our third year of college, we were required to find an internship, like a job placement. Mm-hmm. So basically, I scoured what was called the internet back then, in the year 2000, and I noticed a job posting at a studio in California called Spunko, and they created the Ren and Stimpy show. And I mean, my general love for animation existed far before I started working and far before I was in college. So, I mean, you could really trace it back to Flintstones, Looney Tunes, like some Disney stuff. But really, I loved Looney Tunes and I loved Hanna-Barbera stuff. And then, of course, The Simpsons, Ren and Stimpy, Beavis and Butthead. Those were like a lot of influential cartoons that I loved watching growing up. And of course, all the Saturday morning stuff.
Right.
I couldn't shake my love for animation. Cause even though I didn't go to school for animation, I went to school for broadcasting, radio, television, and film. But I somehow found my way into an internship at Spunko, and it kind of snowballed from there.
Right. And who would you say, who or what really inspired you to go into animation in the first place? And who would you say are your greatest influences in animation?
Well, definitely the works of John Kricfalusi. He's the one that's co-created the show Ren and Stimpy, and did a voice of half. Mike Judge, of course, both voices of Beavis and Butthead, and his drawing style was just unlike anything that was on TV. And I think I just liked the weirdness of that sense. All the worlds and universes that he creates, whether it be television, like animation, or live action. Even currently, Silicon Valley, I love so very much because it's just his kind of humor. No matter if it's animated or live action, I think his comedic sense has always been an influence on me. Of course, Eric Goldberg, like Aladdin was like one of my favorite Disney movies, and a lot of that was because of Robin Williams and Eric Goldberg. His work on that movie was awesome. I think it was probably the first time, in my opinion, like one of, if not the first time, they used a celebrity right. Like in the history of animation, where using a celebrity to do a cameo or a guest starring role on something. And then after, I think, The Genie, it kind of became like really popular to use celebrities.
You mentioned about Mel Blanc was a rather big influence, and who are your other voice acting influences?
Oh yeah, Mel Blanc, Mike Judge, John Kricfalusi. They all kind of like created the shows and then did voices on their own shows, which is kind of an amazing thing.
Right.
To be able to produce a show and then have the energy to go into the sound booth and then perform the characters. Same goes for Matt Stone and Trey Parker for that sense. You know, they write the show and they're kind of responsible for the look of the show. You know, if you're really paying attention, if you're really watching the credits, it's like they're the only two names that really pop up when it comes to the voices. And it traces back to like Mel Blanc being a man of 1,000 voices.
Right. And as you were just mentioning about before with voice actors, like, who produce their own work and also voiced on the work that they produced, you actually had your start in, I read somewhere that you had your start as like an animation artist. Did you ever like do like any animation work on stuff that you've personally also voiced on?
Yeah, actually, funny you mentioned that. One of the very first shows in the United States that I got to work on as an American voice actor was a show called El Tigre.
Right.
Which was on Nickelodeon. It was one of their very first Flash animated shows created by Jorge Gutierrez and Sandra Ikiwa. And they really took a chance on me because, you know, I wasn't quite established in the United States as a voiceover artist. I really had minimal credits, and most of them were in Canada at the time. But also at the time, because I was trying to make ends meet, I was working as a character layout artist at a very used animation studio here called 6 Point Harness.
Right.
And they got a lot of great shows on TV now on Adult Swim, but at the time they were animating El Tigre for Nickelodeon, kind of like a overseas animation studio, but within Burbank, kind of in Hollywood. So it was funny because I would go to the voice session, record my lines, and then report back to work to draw my character.
Right.
So it was kind of like an unusual circumstance, but I'll never forget it, and I'm always thankful to 6 Point for, you know, I wouldn't be able to do that at any of the bigger studios, you know, at least not as often as I did at 6 Point. They were always open to me leaving as long as I got my work done, and they would let me go audition for stuff because they knew that I wanted to voice act.
Right. And as an actor, like, what kind of characters or roles have you been, like, personally drawn to as an actor?
Well, you know, it's funny. There was like a steady stream where I was playing bad guys all the time, which is completely opposite of who I am in real life. You know, I mean, I'm a Canadian, so naturally I'll be very polite. But I think acting in general, you know, you can play whatever you want in voiceover. You're not bound by your appearance. You're bound by your ability to perform the characters vocally.
Right.
So there really are no restraints if you have the range and the ability to, you know, really perform these characters and convince people that you are, you know, a 15-foot orc from Middle Earth, or, you know, a tiny goldfish, or whatever it is they ask you to perform that week.
Right. And so, what has been or is like your favorite character or series to work on?
I'm sorry. Once again, repeat the last question.
Sorry. What has been or is your favorite character or series to work on?
Wow. I mean, there's been so many great ones, and I think a lot of voice actors will agree. Being able to create a character, I think, is the number one point of being an actor. I think is creating that one character that will resonate as you for the rest of your career. But another side of voice acting, you know, unfortunately, you know, we don't live forever, and some people pass on into the next life or incarnation of who they are, and characters that they've created, like legacy characters like Bugs Bunny, or, you know, Mickey Mouse, or whatever other legacy characters are out there for people to step in the shoes of. So I'd have to say, like, being heavily influenced by the Looney Tunes, I really have enjoyed my time with Marvin the Martian the last several years.
Fantastic. And just going on just a little bit, like obviously you mentioned about that you were born in Canada and now you're based in Los Angeles. How does the voice acting industry in Canada compare to the voiceover industry that's in America?
Well, at the time, when I had left, that was like 2003. There really wasn't there was a lot of stuff going on in Canada, but not as much as there is now, because there's like a lot of U.S. companies looking to Canada to team up and do co-productions together because of budgetary reasons. But thinking about it, I wonder if I could go back home to Canada and have the same career as I would if I were to stay here. I mean, it's a toss-up, but there really isn't anything like working here. There are people that I work with that I grew up watching, like Rob Paulson and, Cree Summer and Tara Strong and Jess Harnell, Carlos Alazraki. There's like an endless list. Jeff Bennett, Billy West. There's like an endless list of people that I admire, and I've admired for many years, that, I'm sitting in a room with these folks, and I'm running scenes with the same people that influenced me to become a voiceover artist, and it blows my mind.
It certainly does, and that's truly remarkable. And it's funny that you mentioned about with America getting like production companies and people from Canada to come and work on productions in America, because I know they're very similar. And it's also, you mentioned about with Robin Williams when he did Aladdin. There was one film that he did called Fern Gully, which had, I know it had a lot of American productions on it, but it also had a lot of Australian animators working on that production as well. So it combined kind of the American animation productions, but also bringing in animation productions from Australia as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's work everywhere, it seems. Nowadays, with the way the industry and the need for content has evolved from even the year 2000, in 17 years, it has just blown up. Like, people just can't get enough of shows and the need to watch something new.
That's definitely true. And with all the roles you've done across your entire career and what you're getting now, are all of those roles like audition based?
Oh yeah, 100%. Like everything that if you book it, it's probably because you have to audition. That's just the process. That's part of the industry that'll never go away. Having said that, though, I have been cast in roles that I did not audition for. They just thought, well, we've worked with them often enough that they kind of know my range and what I'm capable of. Mm-hmm. So, I've been lucky in that sense. But more often than not, I just like everybody else, I still got to read for the parts that I'm going for.
Right. And just actually to follow up on that, is that do you walk into like series or such, like expecting to play, like, oh, I'm going to play this role or this character here, or like you expect to walk in playing a certain role, but you play a completely different character than what you were expecting?
Yeah, it's always a toss-up, because you walk into an audition, or you get sent an audition through email, mm-hmm. and they usually just have a very quick character description and a rundown of like maybe 4 or 5 scenes that convey different emotions and different aspects of the character. And even at that point, the network and the creators and the writers, they may not know. The missing component is what you bring to the table, and they may not know that one thing that you can kind of interpret from the script. So it's always a toss-up. There's definitely been many roles where I am so concentrated on one character, but then I end up booking another character because I'm not thinking too much about it. It's kind of funny that way. you kind of just, if you don't care about something, they may hear something different, and they may think you're perfect for that role.
Right. That's fantastic. Now, moving across into your roles. Now, two of your most notable roles is, of course, Stimpy from the Ren and Stimpy adult party cartoon, and Slip and Slide DePeel. How did you get the roles, and what was it like playing those characters and in the series?
Well, for Coconut Fred, that was definitely an interesting situation because I had just moved to Los Angeles, looking to start a voiceover career, and one of my best friends that I had made during my internship, Matt Danner, he's a fantastic director, creator, producer, and now voice actor. He thought that I'd be perfect for those two, the Banana Twins. And, they sounded a little bit like this. They were like country bumpkins, and they were, definitely a few fries short of the Happy Meal. And, but the catch was, Warner Brothers was like, yeah, well, the main character can be played by an American voice actor, but because it was a Canadian co-production, they required the rest of the cast be from Canada. So I traveled all the way from Toronto just to be cast as a Canadian voice actor again.
Wow.
In Los Angeles, which meant at the time I'd have to fly up to Vancouver for every voice session.
Right.
Which was pretty tricky at the time because, I had to pay for my own flights, and but I got to meet some of the greatest Canadian voice actors while I was recording there, and it was amazing. I will never forget those times.
Right.
Now predating that, one of the more main roles that I had before, starting my career in Los Angeles was doing the voice of Stimpy, which again I will always be thankful for. But it was a particular situation because, I had talked about like voicing Marvin the Martian or legacy characters for people that have passed on.
Yeah.
I started out working on the show as a production assistant, and started doing other things like animatic editing and other jobs that needed filling. I never thought that I would be voicing Stimpy.
Wow.
That was never on my radar because I was so hopeful that Billy West would come back to reprise his role. But at the time, he was so busy, I guess, on shows like Futurama, and I think he was pretty much done with playing that character, that the idea of a reboot for that show didn't particularly interest him. So, again, I was never really thought that I was going to do it. And actually, even after Billy West was not available, they had auditioned 2 other actors before they cast me in the role.
Wow.
Yeah. But it'll always be one of those roles to me that, much like, you could even compare it to Billy West voicing Bugs Bunny. I mean, Bugs Bunny will always be Mel Blanc, and for me, Stimpy will always be Billy West. That was a role that defined him as a voice actor. Not only was it just such an iconic role on a show that changed the face of animation, but I think it kind of made him like a modern day Mel Blanc, because he was doing, John was doing Ren, but Billy West was like 90%, 99% of the other characters on that show.
Wow,
So,
that's definitely
yeah.
true.
I mean, I really do look up to Billy, and I'm very thankful that he created such a great character in Stimpy that I was able to learn from, and and granted, that show, as much fun as I did have on it, I mean, it will never be as good as the original, because the original show had so many other great artists working with John on the show, and I mean, it truly was it was a statement. It was more than just a cartoon. It was a group of people that came together that were so over working on like 80s like toy commercial TV shows that really got together and had one voice in making a show that was such a tribute to the old school cartoons that influenced them. And I feel like that was just it was a lightning in a bottle moment that it's so hard to recapture a show like that.
Right.
And, I feel like our version was definitely, I think our version was Adult Swim before Adult Swim, Thinking about it now, it's like, there really wasn't a call for, like, adult cartoons at the time. It wasn't really as much of a desire as it is now.
That's
Adult
true.
Swim is such a big part of Cartoon Network's brand. And at the time, Spike TV was just starting. That was like the first network for men.
Wow.
And it was such a weird channel. It was such a weird experiment. But, I was happy to be a part of it.
That's definitely fantastic, and that's definitely true. Now, as you were just mentioning before about with the quality of animation that you see in shows today, like, what has been your view, and especially having worked as an animation artist, what has been your opinion on the quality of, like, animated shows today as it was, like, 30 or 40 years ago?
Well, I mean, like I said, the demand is high, even at the cost of quality. And I feel like, you look at shows that were, not even shows, sorry, short films that were animated in the 40s, the 30s, 40s, 50s, even 60s, 70s, 80s. Well, maybe not 80s. I think that's when it started to turn. But I think they had so much more time and maybe even a bit more money. And, not everything was sent overseas as it is today. And I believe there have been so many advances in overseas animation and communication-wise. But I just feel like, you look at an old Tom and Jerry cartoon, that was all done, relatively in Burbank, California.
Wow.
They didn't really have an overseas department. And you look at those shows, and they're so beautiful. The paintings were done here. All the animation, everything was done with such care. And I feel like nowadays a lot of people, they just want to get it done quick. And unfortunately, even if you have the best people on it, there may not be enough time to really spend massaging the episodes that they crank out. But there still are really great, beautiful looking shows and music videos like the Gorillas. That's an amazing example of modern day animation that is, they're really, really trying to make it as beautiful as the music is. And they spend a lot of time. It's not like they come out with an album every year. It's every 2 to 3 years, because a lot of work goes into making that visual, the visual aspect of it beautiful. So I think there's some hits and misses nowadays.
Right, and I definitely agree with that in this sense, and that's fantastic. Now, going back into your roles, as you mentioned before, one of your most notable roles is El Tigre, but you've also played in G.I. Joe, Rayman 3, Ape Escape, and Dick Figures the Movie. What characters did you play in those series, and what was it like playing those characters?
More recently, it's funny you mentioned Dick Figures, because that was done by two animators that worked with me at 6 Point. Ed Scudder was one of them, and he kind of moved on from 6 Point to working at Warner Brothers, and now we're working together on Unikitty, which is a character from the Lego Movie. And getting to work on something like stick figures was like a really fun experience because it was kind of like their first time making like a really big show. And I got to play like a few like very minor characters, but in the movie I got to play, the main bad guy, Lord Takagami.
Right.
was the character, Ed Scudder and Zach Keller. They were always very supportive of my voiceover career, and I'll always be thankful to them for that. El Tigre, again, that was my first American animated series, and I still hear from Jorge, who directed Book of Life, which was like his big feature film, and he was kind enough to remember me from El Tigre to work on his film, and again, another milestone for me, because a lot of days these big companies and big studios, they want celebrities to draw an audience. They can't rely on just your everyday voice actor like me to bring in millions of dollars for them, but there are directors and creators out there like Jorge and Sandra that remember, like, we don't want a name, we want talent, we want someone that can do 5 or 6 voices for us, as opposed to just one celebrity voice.
Right. And also, another character that actually stood out to me as well was you played in Shaolin Chronicles as Raimundo. What was it like playing that character and the series? And did you feel extremely nervous taking the role after Tom Kenny?
Oh yeah, but again, that was like another situation of Canadian co-production. I remember that show in its first season and incarnation, and it was well done, so very well done at Warner Brothers. Again, designed by my old buddy Matt Danner, and there was plenty of amazing people that worked on that show, both voiceover and artists on that original series. When I found out it was coming back, that was another question of whether or not they were going to use the same voiceover artists. And unfortunately, because of budgetary purposes, and it happens so often now, you just can't help but it's just a normal part of the job, where if the company's making the show, they're going to do it whether it's they pick you or they cast you or not. Someone's going to do that part. And of course, you want to pay as much respect to the original voiceover artists as possible, and keeping the integrity of the character intact. But at the same time, I guess you got to make it your own somehow. So, was I nervous following an act like Tom Kenny? Yes. But we kind of went through it, and again, very thankful for the opportunity. And we had a blast making it.
That's fantastic. Now, as mentioned before, you've played across a variety of really famous franchises. Particularly one that introduced me to you as a voice actor was the Ben 10 franchise. How did you get to play in the Ben 10 universe, and what's it been like playing in that franchise?
Oh man, yeah, and I mean it continues. Like I said, there's going to be so many versions of shows between now and by the time I'm 80 years old. I mean, there's always a demand for these great shows. Man of Action, which is the creative team that created that show for Cartoon Network, they just know they know action comedy and how to make things fun. And Cartoon Network, it's one of their most watched shows internationally. It does well here in the United States, but it does even better in Europe and in the UK and all over Asia, all over the world. That they can't not make a version of it, because merchandising alone, it does so well with toys, and it's just a fun idea, and it's a fun show to make.
Right.
So for Ben 10 Omniverse, they had done a casting call for all new voices for these familiar aliens that Ben can transform into, and I was working with Matt Youngberg and Derek Wyatt. And Matt Youngberg is now working on the new DuckTales cartoon, so he's very familiar with how to reboot already established franchises and make them really resonate with modern day audiences.
Right. And with
I was honored to be a part of Ben 10 Omniverse.
That's fantastic. And now, of course, you're playing in the new Ben 10 series. With regards to Ben 10 Omniverse, do you feel like that it probably told like the entire story of Ben 10 Omniverse, or would you have wanted to explore like more stories in that series had they have not decided to reboot Ben 10?
Well, I mean, I believe, and much like Ninja Turtles, you know, it's going through another renaissance and reboot because it's been so long. I think the Ben 10 Omniverse series went on for like 2 or 3 seasons, maybe more. I feel like so much time has passed that kids, you know, they will always just want to skew younger because they have to reintroduce the show to an entirely new audience. Maybe the kids that grew up with Omniverse aren't interested anymore, so they can't really do another version of Omniverse. They have to start over.
Right.
So, you know, now you could probably tell even by the design of the brand new show, it definitely is a little bit younger. And I know the show has I think the last version that we did, Omniverse, was more action comedy, and the version previous may have been a bit more serious in tone. So there's always going to be fans that, you know, found the show in their own way, and they always hope that it'll be exactly how it was when they left it. But, you know, that's not always the case. And I'm sure the networks take that into consideration, but, you know, they have to look at it from the point of view that they have to reintroduce the show to an entirely new audience.
Right.
So, yeah, it's very interesting. It's hard not to get involved mentally on a business sense, because that's basically, you know, unfortunately there is the business side to these cartoons that they make, and that's how you have to approach it.
That's definitely true, and you're absolutely right about that, in that another notable example, and in the series that you've also played in as well, was the Powerpuff Girls series, the rebooted series as well. And especially for like fans of the original Powerpuff Girls series, they hold a very special place. That holds a very special place in their hearts as well. What was it like taking part in the Powerpuff Girls series compared to, and especially thinking about the original series in mind?
Yeah, I mean, I've done like a handful of episodes with them. I've been very lucky to be a part of, again, a reimagining of a show that, yeah, I mean, Gendy Tartakovsky and Craig McCracken, how could I leave those two out? Those guys are amazing creators, artists. They're amazing storytellers. They were part of a generation of animation that, you know, they were able to make their very own. I mean, like Samurai Jack, that's how you do a comeback right there.
Absolutely.
You know, like when you say you're going to do a kids cartoon that's going to be on an adult network, they basically just took advantage of the fact that, yeah, we can be a little bit more graphic and violent with it, but they didn't do it in a distasteful way. They just did it in a way that kind of like, you know, that's exactly what you wanted to see, or this is the exact limit of how we could have pushed this children's show without turning you off, and I thought they did it extremely well. Now with Powerpuff Girls, it was tough because I guess, you know, Craig McCracken was not available to work on his on a show that was being rebooted that was owned by the network now. Although he did try to, you know, kind of refresh the people that were taking it over for him. I was honored because, yeah, I mean, Powerpuff Girls was one of the coolest shows that I grew up watching, and to know that I was able to kind of get my thumbprint in there in some way, some form, I was completely thrilled.
That's fantastic, and that's definitely really great to hear. Now, another series that you're also most notable for playing is Fairly Odd Parents. What was it like stepping into that series, especially now, and now with it celebrating its 16th anniversary and Carrie Walgren being part of the main cast?
Oh man, like I was introduced on that show. It had to have been. Oh man, I can't even remember like what season it was. But imagine you're walking into a room with Darren Norris, Suzanne Blakesley, Tara Strong, Grey Delisle, and Carlos Elizraki. You know, they had been doing the show for many years, and I got introduced as a brand new character. And you know, Butch Hartman is very, he's very particular about who he works with, and you know, he just knows comedy and he knows funny when he sees it. And I considered myself very lucky to be a part of a cast and a very well-oiled machine that was already doing its work. I mean, you could argue that Nickelodeon is the house that SpongeBob built, but I'd say 50% of that house was, Fairly Odd Parents, because it's still running and it's still doing well for the studio, and that's all thanks to Butch Hartman.
That's definitely true, and he really helped to bring us. I mean, Butch Hartman is like one of the best animators and storytellers of all time, so that's definitely true. So, hats off to him, of course, for bringing such an incredible series, and especially celebrating its 16th anniversary, that's a pretty big milestone in itself.
Oh yeah.
Now, other famous franchises that you stepped into was, of course, you also played in the Lego universe, playing in famous franchises from Star Wars to the comic book universe, and you also played in the Transformers universe. What was it like stepping into those two universes?
Well, it's so crazy because Lego, I mean, it's now just become this, like, automatic comedy filter. Like, you could take any existing franchise and say it's the Lego version of The Simpsons, the Lego version of Marvel or DC, and it just becomes this, like, canon. You know, it's so funny. I don't know, they just crack this code, and I've done a few straight to DVD DC universe. I've played Lego Commissioner Gordon. I've played Lego Bane. There's another project coming up. I wish I could say I could talk about it, but it was very exciting for me. And of course, like you mentioned, Lego Luke Skywalker, which, as you know, Mark Hamill will always be Luke. I mean, he's Luke Skywalker right now. It's hard to he's irreplaceable. But for the comedic purposes, you know, it didn't have my version of Lego Luke Skywalker didn't need to be an exact voice replica. It was more of kind of like a parody, more or less.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, it is a true honor being able to be trusted with such characters like Luke Skywalker and Bane and Commissioner Gordon and so forth. As far as Transformers is concerned, wow, you know, like I never thought I would grow up one day and be an Autobot. If I could build the time machine and visit myself as a youth and say, hey, you're gonna be an Autobot, just get ready, you know, I would say that you were a liar. Yeah, being able to play Drift in Robots in Disguise has been a dream come true.
That's fantastic, and that's really amazing to hear. Now, speaking about, of course, with, as I mentioned before, the comic book world, you played across many variations of famous comic book characters, from Adam Warlock to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, to parodies like Captain Cod and Lex Luger. What was it like stepping into the comic book universe?
Well, it's tricky for me because, you know, I'll be the first to tell you that, one, I never really booked commercials, and two, I never really booked, like, the heavy action stuff. I consider myself more of like a cartoony kind of guy, and you know, to be able to kind of enter the Marvel universe as someone like Amadeus Cho, and you know, that I got to play Iron Spider for Ultimate Spider-Man. That was a complete thrill for me, and you know, comic books are always going to be a part of our culture, our pop culture, because, you know, Stan Lee has created such a great universe for actors to play these. And I was just talking to someone about Ninja Turtles as well. It's like, you know, there's been so many versions of Michelangelo, Raphael, Leonardo, and Donatello. The characters are almost like Shakespearean. You know, you kind of like, if you know who the characters are, you can kind of make them your own and come out with an amazing performance. You know, Shredder, Splinter, these are all characters that they're so defined, and it really takes a good actor to kind of step into those roles and really convince you, like, yeah, that is a very convincing version of Splinter I never would have heard of. So yeah, I feel like being able to be on those shows and those franchises is truly a challenge, but it's also a blessing.
That's truly fantastic, and that's absolutely true. Now, as you were mentioning before earlier about legacy characters, like you've mentioned about, of course, with Looney Tunes, Tom and Jerry, and also playing in the Peabody and Sherman shows, Scooby-Doo, did you feel like extremely nervous, like playing such iconic characters? And did you ever think...
Oh, yeah. I mean, Marvin the Martian, like, I will always go to that example as far as, you know, just being a character that has... He really wasn't a big part of the original run of Looney Tunes. I think in all of the years, he may have only had 5 different animated shorts. But he could sell Michael Jordan shoes like no other character, I swear to God. I mean, I grew up as a kid in the 90s, and those Looney Tunes commercials with Michael Jordan and Bugs Bunny, like, I mean, they spawned Space Jam, you know, and everyone laughs at Space Jam, and they think it's like this really corny movie. But for whatever reason, it's such a popular mashup of like basketball like stars and Looney Tunes characters. I don't know. You could ask me, and I won't tell. I can't even tell you why it works, but it just does. And I was able to provide the voice of Marvin the Martian for a Michael Jordan campaign to sell shoes, and it was Marvin the Martian versus Blake Griffin from the LA Clippers in a dunk contest.
Wow!
And I couldn't ever imagine that in my time here on Earth that I could say that I was part of anything bigger. Like, that was like I tell you, I never booked commercials, but that was one of the few commercials that I've booked, and you know, it truly was a dream come true. That's
fantastic. And speaking about with other legacy characters, was that you also played in the Flintstones and Jetsons, and in like a bit of a WWE crossover. What was it like playing such like a pretty crazy crossover as like having the Flintstones and the Jetsons meet the World Wrestling sort of thing?
It is. There's another example of, like, you know, cross marketing that for whatever reason works so well. Scooby-Doo has probably more straight to DVD like movies now than, I mean, most of the Hanna-Barbera and Warner Brothers franchises. And I don't know why kids just love that dog. You know, and it just so happens that kids love wrestling too. So, I mean, it is probably one of the weirdest combinations that you could ever think of, but because neither of those franchises take themselves so seriously, you know, it allows the viewers just to come in and have as much fun as possible.
Right, that's definitely true. Now, of course, you're currently playing in the role of Puss in Boots. How did you get the role, and what was it? And what's it been like stepping into the Shrek franchise?
Well, as we know, Antonio Banderas will always be Puss in Boots. But I was able to do this for DreamWorks, and I'm very proud. Yeah, I mean, like, being able to say that I've done the voice of Puss in Boots is so unreal to me, because Shrek was already a very popular franchise for feature films. And then as soon as they introduced that character into the main cast of characters, you know, he blew up and he got his own movie, and you know, that's all thanks to Antonio. Antonio really just is Puss in Boots. And you know, it was definitely a challenge to kind of mimic what he does, because it's one thing to try to sound like him, but it's Antonio's unpredictability that makes him a great actor and performer. So rather than try to voice match him, I'm kind of more going for his unpredictability and how, even just how he enunciates things, or how he puts inflection in certain words and lines that truly make that character unique to him. So rather than trying to make, you know, just a straight up voice match, I would try to just throw in curveballs and see if it would make the writers laugh or the director laugh, you know, something unexpected, because I believe that is, you know, the secret to Antonio Banderas' success.
That's definitely true, and that's fantastic. Now, apart from being an actor and an animation artist, you're also a stand-up comedian. Where did stand-up comedy come into play for you?
Oh, man. Well, I don't really do stand-up anymore. That was a very, very, compared to my voiceover career, that was a very short period in my life. And I really do thank Harland Williams and Carlos Elizraqui for influencing me and trying to get me into stand-up. And, you know, I think it takes a certain person and a certain skill to really be able to, you know, make stand-up look so easy, because it's really hard to do. And unlike voiceover, it wasn't the first thing that I thought of, you know, when I got up in the morning. You know, stand-up comedians are very, like, addicted to that world, and they're so, like, you know, like when you go see your favorite singer in concert, they're singing the same 10 songs that you love so much, but you love that performance. Like stand-up comedy, like Harlan Williams and Carlos, I've seen them perform 2 sets back to back with the same material, but they were 2 different sets every time. It didn't feel like the same act. It felt like 2 different plays that I was watching. And that right there is what makes them great at what they do, is they make things that you know sound brand new every time they say it.
That's definitely true, and that's fantastic. Now, going back into acting for a bit there, now as we know that the preparation for animation for voice actors is much different to like live action actors, but some notable examples, like as we know, Ben Affleck, when I think he was preparing for the role of Batman, that he would walk around in the full Batman suit, and I think Heath Ledger and Jared Leto, when they took to preparing for the role of the Joker, they took it to such extreme lengths to make those characters really iconic. What's the preparation that you go through? What has been your preparation in voicing characters, and is it the same like through every role that you've gotten?
Well, I mean, sometimes these roles are given to you very last minute, so you may not have a lot of time to spend in the persona of the character. But for characters like Puss in Boots or Marvin the Martian, there is like a lot of existing material that you can study and really, you know, get into the mindset of that character. I mean, I wish I had a Spartan helmet that I could wear for Marvin the Martian and spend all my time in that helmet, but it really is just listening to, you know, Mel Blanc and studying his choices and his the melody of the voice that he puts into a character that sets it aside from his other characters. Yeah, same thing goes for Antonio Banderas. I will probably, on my way to work, if I'm performing those characters, I will plug my phone into my car and listen to clips of performances and lines of dialogue that those actors have portrayed in character, and try to just, you know, match the essence of what they're trying to leave behind with these characters. That's
fantastic. That's definitely true, and that actually reminds me of a story with Cameron Monaghan, who's the actor that's playing the proto Joker on Gotham, where he said his inspiration for his version of the Joker came from Mark Hamill's version and from Heath Ledger's version, but it also came from reading the comic books as well. So I can see where you're coming from in that sense. But I have heard of actors, for example, like Richard Epcar, who played the Joker in the Injustice series, has said that he never listened to Mark Hamill's version of the Joker, and he said that he never will, because he's trying to do it as how his version as much as possible. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's like amazing, because yeah, you don't want to fall into that trap of, you know, into someone else's performance, because Mark Hamill made such a dent in that character vocally that it is hard. It is so hard to not want to do his version because it's so good. So yeah, Richard Epcar, who I know, he's very, very, very talented man. I think that was wise, because now, you know, it's his version. He can't be cited as, you know, siphoning from another person's performance. I think that's a very good decision to make. If you're trying to make some character as iconic as the Joker, your very own Joker.
That's definitely true. Now, as an actor, what was the most challenging role, performance-wise, for you to play?
I mean, like I said, any of the more serious stuff that maybe I'm not doing a cartoony voice for. I played Ezekiel Stain, who's the son of I forgot the main character. He was in Iron Man, one of the very first Iron Man movies. Jebediah Stain, I think.
Oh yeah, Jeff Bridges' character, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Or Obadiah Stane. He was the son of this, you know, the evil version of Stark, and he was just so evil. Like the tech kind of, I felt like the tech that he was using kind of took over his persona, and it was basically just my own voice and just trying to work through the motions. And the other challenge was, it was ADR, because it was an anime that I did. You're kind of stuck within the parameters of what the other actor left behind for you. But it was definitely a challenge to kind of channel that kind of evil and that kind of emotionless evil.
Right.
You know, it was kind of hard to abandon, you know, just being human almost. It was definitely a challenge, and one of my favorite roles to play.
That's fantastic. What's like one character or series that you've ever wanted to play or ever wished that you played?
I mean, man, oh man, it's hard to say, because I keep landing roles on things that I often dream of, and you know, maybe now that I've done like a lot of stuff for others, I would love to create my own show maybe down the road. Maybe I'll pick up the old pencil and start drawing again.
That would be fantastic. That would be amazing. And of course, across all the roles that you've played in your entire career, what would you say has been the one role that resonates with you the most and you feel like you could relate to as a person?
I loved playing Badus on Breadwinners. He's kind of like, you know, it's a bread delivering duck. I mean, I mean, that's what you think of when you look at me, I'm sure. But no, I think he was just an overall like lovable like character, and I really tried to create something different and fun and my own. And he gave me that opportunity. That character will always be on the top of my list as most relatable as far as his personality. He's just outgoing and wacky and wild, and you know, just wants to be there for you. He wants to be your best friend.
That's fantastic. And going back onto when we're talking about, of course, like the animation, like where the animation is done now compared to where it was like 30, 40 years ago. What has been your view on? What has been your view or your opinion on the animation industry in the context of like the overall entertainment industry? Like, how do you feel about where the animation industry stands in the context of the overall entertainment industry?
Well, I mean, now more than ever, you look at stuff like video games making more money in one day than a weekend at the box office for films. You know, I mean, there is some heavy competition out there. Like, and again, technology has such a big part to play in where people get their entertainment. So I feel like the digital age that we've moved into, you know, less and less people are watching television. More and more people are watching their phones and their tablets. You know, they're always on the go, and you know, you don't have to wait Saturday mornings to watch cartoons anymore, or after school. You can watch them anytime you want. I feel like it's all going towards the same direction, and I think it's just people just want more and more and more. And again, that side kind of makes the quality suffer a little bit. Mm-hmm. But I still think there are people out there that, you know, nothing will ever beat a good story.
Absolutely.
Above all else, you know, you can make it look as slick as possible, or you could turn it out as cheap as possible. But at the end of the day, what will stand and has always stood the test of time is just telling a good story.
That's absolutely true. And this follows up into my next question as well. If you could change one thing about the entertainment industry, what would that be, and why?
I mean, that's a pretty big question. It's a pretty open question. Yeah, I mean, being able to predict trends. I mean, it's so funny, like being, you know, again, it's a situation where what's making money will interfere with, you know, just good characters or telling a good story. It's like you may have an amazing story about a cowboy, but they're like, well, we're not doing westerns this week. We're doing clowns. And then next week we're going to do leprechaun stories. And then the week after that, I think, you know, the trends, they come and go. But I guess it's just being able to kind of not have those borders or parameters that a lot of corporations feel they need to adhere to.
Right. That's definitely true. Now, without going into any spoilers, what's next for Eric Bauza for the fans to know about?
Comic-Con. We're going to Comic-Con this week, and you know, I always look forward to it. I call it the company Christmas party, where everyone gets drunk and says things to each other that maybe they shouldn't say. Yeah, I'm going to be a part of a lot of great panels. Ben 10 we had talked about. I will be moderating the Boomerang panel, which will showcase a lot of the old classic cartoons, as well as a few new ones like Bunnicula, Wizard of Oz, new Looney Tunes, and a farewell to Ninja Turtles. It'll be the last Comic-Con panel for the version of Ninja Turtles that we're on right now. So
wow.
Hopefully you'll keep track of everything on YouTube as it comes out.
Absolutely. And final question, what do you think that Puss in Boots would say if he was in Australia?
Well, I hear those kangaroo pouches are very comfortable. I would like to ride around in a kangaroo if I could.
That's fantastic. That's definitely what he would probably say. That's wonderful.
Because sometimes it is hard to walk around in these boots.
That's fantastic.
Well, I have had such a blast, and I thank you again for your patience trying to track me down.
That's no problem at all. That's absolutely no problem at all.
And I think that you're a great interviewer, man. You got to keep going with this.
Absolutely. I'm never going to always going to do this. Always will. Eric Bauza, thank you so much. It's been an honor.
Yes, likewise, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And anything you'd like to say to the fans out there, particularly in Australia?
Oh my God! thank you guys so very much for all of your support. I mean, I don't really get out much. I do New York Comic Con and San Diego Comic Con, but if I ever had the chance to come to Australia, I would shake each and every one of your hands and give you a big hug, because we make these cartoons and we don't know who sees them or who responds to them, and I know there's an entire world out there, and Australia is a big part of it, that they just love. I go off of all the other voiceover artists. I see all their Instagram posts, and Australia looks like such a beautiful place on earth that, and they just love cartoons as much as we love making them up here. So I'm very thankful to any fans that are hearing this now. I really am very thankful for your support over the years. If you like the stuff that I do, thank you again.
That's no problem at all. Well, guys, if you'd like to find out more about Eric Bauza, you can check out the links down below in the description, and you can currently catch him on the Netflix Puss in Boots series. And don't forget to also check out my links, which will be down below as well. And any requests you guys have, just leave them below in the comments. Thank you guys so much. This is Simon and Eric Bauza signing off. See ya.
That's right, Earth creature.
Catch you around.